On this Monday episode of Locked On Grizzlies, Memphis is going to the ship. They are playing for a Summer League championship tonight against the Miami Heat after their victory over the Los Angeles Clippers. We'll talk about how they got there, preview the game to come, and the transaction that occurred over the weekend. Ziaire Williams, now a member of the Brooklyn Nets. What does it mean for Memphis moving forward? All that and more on this Monday episode. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is a Monday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Thank you so much for being with me wherever you're checking out the show, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, however you're checking out Locked On Grizzlies. It is I, Joe Mullinax, your host for this episode. That is right. No to Michael Cole. He will be back with us on Tuesday. Look forward to having him back, hopefully talking about a Summer League championship, but we'll be talking about the road to get there and how they can hoist the Summer League trophy, plus a little bit of Ziaire Williams on the move on this edition of Locked On Grizzlies. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by the good folks over at FanDuel. Make every moment more. Playoffs are winding down. Summer League is coming to an end. Sports stop sportsing like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That is correct. Something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Again, we are free and available wherever you get podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. Hopefully at this point you are an everydayer checking out Locked On Grizzlies every time that an episode drops over on Amazon, Spotify, YouTube, Apple, wherever you get podcasts. Hopefully you're subscribing both audio as well as video, right? Shout out to our wonderful YouTube community that we're building, but you also should have an audio possibility in case you're at the gym and you want to catch the show for the day. Maybe you're on a drive, long trip, and you're coming home from vacation. Whatever the case might be, get the audio version of the show in addition to the video one. Again, Amazon, Apple, Spotify, literally anywhere you get a podcast, you can get Locked On Grizzlies. A lot to talk about on this Monday episode of the show, right? And that's nice when you have the solo show and a trade goes down and Memphis is still playing meaningful, and I use that term loosely, meaningful Summer League basketball going into the championship game tonight. It's an easy show to plan, and we'll start off with the big win over the Los Angeles Clippers. Two major takeaways for me from that contest, two things that really jumped out. Number one, and this is going to sound lazy. Hopefully you're an everydayer at this point. You check out the show every time an episode drops and you say, Joe's not lazy. He's a lot of things. He's a little bit loud, a little bit sweaty sometimes on the podcast, a little bit angry when he shouldn't be, but he's not someone who is going to be lazy, right? I'm trying not to have a lazy take here. I'm genuinely excited by it. It's just nice to see them care, right? It's nice to see Scotty Pippen Jr., who in my opinion is not just the Memphis Grizzlies MVP of Summer League, like we talked about on an episode last week. He is the MVP of Summer League for the National Basketball Association, a triple-double in this contest. He comes out in a post-game interview with Jessica Benson of Grind City Media, and he says, we are going to do whatever it takes to win. I want to do whatever it takes to win. Awesome. That sounds fantastic. And what else does Scotty Pippen Jr. have to prove? Josh Selby taught us over a decade ago and other players since then that Summer League, in terms of projecting what it means for NBA futures, it means squadoosh. Nothing, negatory, nada, zip, zero, zilch. Scotty Pippen Jr. projects to be the long-term, hopefully, backup to Ja Morant for the Memphis Grizzlies. Michael Cole called that a while ago. He shot his shot, nailed it. I see the vision. I don't need to see any more from Scotty Pippen Jr. I believe. And yet there he is. Not the most efficient offensive game. I think he shot 5 for 15 from the field. But again, he's rebounding the ball. He's getting the ball out in space. He's creating transition opportunities. He's forcing turnovers on opponents, which is going to be huge in the game against the Heat tonight. He is doing things, competing at the highest level in Summer League. It doesn't matter. But at the same time, it does, because this is a group that has not won. One of the reasons they're having success, we've talked about it here. They played NBA basketball together several months ago, and they were losing a lot. So for them to go undefeated in Las Vegas, for them to have the run that they're having going into this title game, It is a major positive to see Scotty Pippen Jr. say, I want to play, I want to do what it takes to win. He has nothing left to prove. Gigi Jackson has nothing left to prove. Would I like to see him pass more? Absolutely. If you're an everydayer, you know that to be a fact. And shout out to Gigi for 4 assists in the contest against the Clippers. It makes a difference with the offense when the ball moves from his hands and doesn't get stuck there. But Gigi Jackson has rebounded well throughout Summer League. Gigi Jackson has scored the basketball well throughout Summer League. What does he have to prove? Nothing. Not to me, at least. Not anymore. And yet there he is, being an important piece of that win. They are trying to win. They're going for it, and that is a positive. They're being cautious with Zach Edey, being cautious with Cam Spencer, being cautious with Jake LaRavia. Jake LaRavia didn't play against the Clippers. Knee soreness. Is he going to play tonight? Who knows? I don't know. If he does, it gives Memphis a heck of a lot better shot to beat a pretty darn good Summer League Miami Heat team. If he doesn't, it's probably a coin flip. We'll cover that more later on in the show. But it's just good to see these guys, if they are healthy, if they are not banged up. There's no load management. There's no resting and watching minutes and miles, tread on the tires, whatever nonsense you want to say. They're trying to win. That's a good thing. And a positive, a silver lining to the LaRavia dark cloud was that Jalen Wells, another major takeaway from this contest for me, Jalen Wells, a massive scoring night. 9 for 12 from the field. 6 for 7 from 3. And that's what gets me the most gassed up. And that's what should get you gassed up too. Jalen Wells hit some mid-range jumpers. That doesn't matter. I don't care about the mid-range jumper. If the mid-range jumper mattered, Ziaire Williams would still be a member of the Memphis Grizzlies. We'll talk more about that in a moment too. Ziaire Williams is gone. So the turnaround jumper that Jalen Wells hit at the free throw line, I could care less about that. What have DeMichael and I talked about on the show consistently throughout the Summer League run? Are they doing things that are going to be applicable to what they will be asked to do when the games start to count in the fall? And Jalen Wells shooting 6 for 7 from 3, hitting a transition 3 as the trailing wing, being on the perimeter and making a shot off of dribble penetration from a lead guard coming off of a screen from Gigi Jackson. That's all stuff that could very well happen 4 months from now. Jalen Wells hitting those shots. Jalen Wells looking like a functioning, competitive player who's not just capable of getting hot, but being capable of dominating. We've seen that numerous times now. Consistency is always going to be a struggle with a rookie, right? Give or take an all-time great. Rookies are going to get hot sometimes. They're going to struggle at other times. They're going to hit a wall. But seeing Jalen Wells have that kind of productivity, seeing him compete at that level and hit those threes and find his spots and get into a rhythm, I love Luke Kennard. If you're an everydayer, you know that. I'm excited they're probably going to re-sign him soon after this Ziaire Williams trade, and we'll talk more about that here next on the show. Jalen Wells can get hot like Luke Kennard can get hot. We've at least seen evidence of that from a Summer League perspective. The shot looks good. It'd be great to see it come November and December too, when injuries almost undoubtedly strike the Memphis Grizzlies like they have in the past. So shout out to Jalen Wells. Shout out to Gigi Jackson, Scotty Pippen Jr., Jason March. Kudos to him, old friend of Grizzly Bear Blues Live back in the day. The staff, these players, regardless of what happens tonight, Summer League has been a massive success, and they deserve all the credit in the world for that. Shout out to them for the way they've handled it, the way they've gotten after it, the way they've competed. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we are going to take a closer look at the trade that sent Ziaire Williams to the Brooklyn Nets. Memphis frees up, likely, a roster spot. No disrespect to Mamadi Diakite, but it'll make more sense here in a moment. Memphis looking for flexibility. Memphis looking for the ability to stay under the apron, not necessarily under the tax. We'll talk all about that and more coming up next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I know you love sports too, right? It's something that we have in common. I love them so much that I don't want them to stop. But Summer League's coming to an end. The WNBA is coming out of their All-Star break. The Olympics are about to start. It's one of those weird times when there's not as much games going on and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app, dream up bets anytime that I am in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That is correct. You heard me right. Something for everyone every day, all summer long. What are you waiting for? Head over to FanDuel.com. Start making the most out of your summer right now with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the good folks over at Major League Baseball. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, Ziaire Williams, a Grizzly no more? What does it mean moving forward for Memphis? Stick around. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am Joe Mullinax, flying solo on this episode. No DeMichael Cole this time around. He is enjoying the end of a trip over a weekend. I am here after my trip, right? Nice little long weekend kind of vibe as Summer League comes to an end. DeMichael will be back with us on tomorrow's show, hopefully talking about a Summer League championship win for the Memphis Grizzlies. But before we get back into the Summer League vibe, Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN reported over the weekend that Ziaire Williams had indeed finally been traded. We knew that this was a possibility for some time. Breaking news from Woj, the Woj bomb, Ziaire Williams and a 2030 second-round pick via Dallas to the Brooklyn Nets for Mamadi Diakite. Sources tell ESPN. This is from the Woj Post on X. Williams was the 10th pick in the 2021 draft. The Nets also will be sending the Grizzlies the draft rights to Nemanja Dang-Ubic. I always mispronounce that name. Sorry about that. The 54th pick in the 2014 NBA draft, sources said. Now, obviously, the player there doesn't matter, right? That guy's never going to play for the Memphis Grizzlies. It's an item, the rights to a player that can be traded and moved as part of future dealings if necessary. That's exactly what Brooklyn just did, right? The name that matters most here is Ziaire Williams. And Ziaire Williams, as Woj pointed out, was the 10th overall pick in that 2021 draft. Memphis decides to move on. And as I posted on X when the news went live, at Joe Mullinax, if you want to follow me there, square peg, round hole. DeMichael has talked about it. I've talked about it. Ziaire has tremendous upside, in my opinion. I still believe that. And I think that Ziaire Williams going to the Brooklyn Nets, a team that could care less if they win this season, right? They're trying to capture the flag. I think that was my old buddy Parker Fleming's call in terms of the young man who should be the number one overall pick in the 2025 NBA draft, right? So if flag is the focus for the Nets, who cares if Ziaire Williams comes in, plays 30 minutes a game, and you're bad? Brooklyn doesn't. It's an upside swing on a young player who still has a lot of talent. And his numbers in the mid-range remain impressive. I think he shot something like 57% on mid-range shots last season. This is a young man who has the capacity to play in the NBA, but he is never, or was never, going to be what the Memphis Grizzlies wanted him to be, which was that spot-up shooter like a Jalen Wells showed he had the potential to be in Summer League. Jalen Wells did something in Vegas that we've never seen Ziaire Williams do. Were there times that Ziaire Williams played well in transition, especially next to Ja Morant? Absolutely. Were there times where Ziaire had strong showings offensively? You betcha. Did he ever really do it in the way that head coach Taylor Jenkins and that staff wanted it to be done? No. He did not. And now it was time to make a decision. Money gets tighter. 3 max contracts, soon to be max, with Jaren Jackson Jr. up for extension here in the next season or so. Decisions have to be made. And if Ziaire was not part of the long-term plans, it was wise to move on from him and potentially open up a roster spot, which we'll talk more about. When you look at the Grizzlies roster, Jake LaRavia, wouldn't you rather have him playing than Ziaire Williams? I would. What about John Conchar? As hard as it is, as much as it pains me to say, I would rather John Conchar at this point play than Ziaire Williams. Jalen Wells, I think, has shown more in what Memphis is trying to do than Ziaire Williams. And, of course, Vince Williams Jr. and Gigi Jackson hitting on those 2 picks in particular make the swing and a miss for for Ziaire Williams a lot more palatable. Because make no mistake, this was a roster dump. This was a salary dump. Memphis had to tag a second-round pick. Now, granted, it's a 2030 second-round pick. It's literally 6 years from now. Guys that might have that pick used on them are, 13 years old at the moment. So it's not that significant in that way. But they still had to give up some draft capital to move off of the Ziaire Williams contract. And they bring back a player in Mamadi Diakite, a former University of Virginia Cavalier, that as much as I love the idea of a UVA go who's go player being on the Grizzlies, he's probably not long for this Memphis life. Now, would he check the fifth big box? Yeah. About 6'9", can score a little bit, rebound a little bit, has some defensive chops playing in that Tony Bennett defensive system. I think that you could do worse with an end of bench player. But Memphis almost certainly thinks that they can do better. And the real winner of this trade for Memphis is the fact that if they waive Diakite, that gets them to about $4.7 million saved. And you look at the realities after, I think it's, something like $880,000, something along those lines that are guaranteed to Diakite at some point. He's already had some of that contract guaranteed. Luke Kennard is still not a member of the Grizzlies roster. And with Ziaire gone and Diakite on the roster, Memphis is now something like $11 million-ish under the first apron. That matters. We've talked about why that matters. Team building, the ability to keep trade exceptions, the ability to mold and mix your roster, not being hard capped in a certain apron or a certain place where you can't sign certain guys if they make a certain amount of money. DeMichael's the expert on that stuff. Just trust that it's a heck of a lot harder to build a team if you are in that first apron going into a trade deadline than if you're not. And Memphis, if they can do it now anyway, if they keep Diakite, but especially if they waive it, they can re-sign Kennard to a 2-year, $20-ish million deal, 3-year, $30-ish million, whatever the structure might be. They can re-sign Luke, stay under the apron, and be able to use full mid-level exception. They can be able to do all the things with their traded player exceptions. It gives them so much more flexibility to use, if they so choose, going into the season, maybe around the trade deadline. Now, if you're a veteran of watching and following Locked On Grizzlies, if you are someone who is an everyday, or maybe you've just supported the Grizzlies for a long time and you're checking out Locked On Grizzlies for the first time today, you know what's probably going to happen, right? The fact that we, at least me, I'll speak for myself, having followed this team since 2012 actually, I never thought the Memphis Grizzlies would pay the luxury tax. Robert Parra is one of the wealthiest owners in the NBA. If they re-sign Luke Kennard, they will be in the luxury tax, but they'll be below the apron, almost certainly, depending on the structure of the contract. I am choosing to believe that that is what's going to come of this. They are going to go into the tax, not go over the apron, gives them all the flexibility that they need going into a season ahead. That is an important one for Taylor Jenkins with a brand new coaching staff, for everyone involved that wants to win and get Memphis back to the top 4 or so of the Western Conference, where they probably should be, right? It's a lot easier to make moves that are necessary to get you over the hump if you're under that apron. But the small market cynic in me can't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, they're going to try to avoid the tax overall. Now, does that seem like a stretch? Yeah. DeMichael's more tapped into the organization than me. He has said time and again, it's almost a certainty that Luke Kennard will be back. We've heard that from other more national reporters as well, like a Mark Stein. It's odds are that they're going to pay the tax, but let me know in the comments if you're hesitant like me, right? And I know some of you don't like Luke Kennard, and it's wild to me that you don't like a top 10 3-point shooter in the history of the NBA. I'm cool with him being on the roster. Let me know if you're gun shy to see luxury tax stuff. We'll see how that all plays out. Let me know what you think in the comments. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we will close out this episode of the show talking about Summer League Championship vibes. Memphis takes on Miami tonight. How can they win the ship and bring it home to Memphis, have a parade? Probably not have a parade, but how can they get the job done against the Miami Heat? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, I want to remind you of Locked On Sports Today, the first of its kind 24/7 streaming channel over on YouTube. You can also check it out under Amazon Fire on the free TV channels app. It is a wonderful place where you can check out all the great content that Locked On NBA, Locked On NFL, Locked On College, Locked On Hockey, MLB, whatever the case might be. You can check out all the great shows of the network. Make that your second watch, your second listen today. Check out Locked On Sports Today over on YouTube or on Amazon Fire under the free TV channels app. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die whip alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Things like superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you are looking for. With the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it is going to be a promise that the part will fit your ride every time, guaranteed, or your money back. With eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices that you want, it is easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die whip alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to United States customers. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we close out this Monday show talking Miami-Memphis championship season. Stick around. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am Joe Mullinax, flying solo on this episode. No DeMichael Cole. He'll be back with us on Tuesday. I can't wait to get his take on what Ziaire Williams' time in Memphis meant. Yeah, we just scratched the surface of Ziaire, right? I want to save a larger conversation about how that all went down for DeMichael and I to kind of tackle together. We'll talk more about Ziaire, certainly talk about the championship game, who are at Summer League MVP. We already kind of landed on Scotty Pippen Jr., how we feel about the young core of this team moving forward coming out of Summer League. Lots of good stuff to talk about on the Tuesday show. But before we get to Tuesday, we got to close out Monday, dear listener, dear viewer, and it's championship time. The Memphis Grizzlies take on the Miami Heat. Very exciting times. I believe that is a 7 o'clock start for everybody in Memphis. They're in the Central Time Zone. Yes, 7 o'clock. Monday night. It's going to be on ESPN. Make sure you're checking it out. Lots of good stuff. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier in the show, just excited that they're going for it. I'm going to break my rule a little bit and talk to you a little bit about the Miami Heat Summer League team for two reasons. Number one is Kel'el Ware, who we've talked about here on the show a couple of times in the lead up to the NBA draft. If Donovan Clingan didn't fall to Memphis, which we now know he didn't, if Zach Edey wasn't actually in the mix for the Grizzlies, which we now know he was, Ware would have made a lot of sense. DeMichael really liked Ware. Ware has been a big part of the Miami Heat Summer League success. In their semifinal game against the Warriors, Ware played 23 minutes, made a three-point shot, had 5 rebounds, did some good things in terms of being an aggressive player, scoring the ball. Ware's had a good Summer League. So somebody to keep an eye on there, former apple of the eye, of one DeMichael Cole, Kel'el Ware. Josh Christopher, former Memphis Grizzly, Josh Christopher, friend of Ja Morant, or at least an admirer of Ja Morant's. An impressive Summer League performance against the Warriors, as well as overall for him as well. 23 points against Golden State. Didn't shoot as well in terms of the three-point line, but he got to the charity stripe consistently. Christopher is somebody to keep an eye on, and there's other players, of course, as well, but those are the two with Locked On Grizzlies and Memphis Grizzlies overall connections. For Memphis, we know that Zach Edey's not going to play, right? He's out. He's been ruled out. He's done. Same thing with Cam Spencer. So we don't need to wax about what will happen if those guys play. Jake LaRavia, though, is somebody who was held out of the game against the Clippers, and it was said that it was a precautionary thing. It was not said that LaRavia was shut down for the rest of Summer League. Maybe it was the concern of a back-to-back, and they just want to give him the chance to play tonight. That'd be sweet, right? Because this team could use all the depth it can get with Spencer out, with Edey out. Another impressive scorer of the basketball, another person who is dominant in terms of creating turnovers. That matters a lot. The Miami Heat only committed 8 turnovers in their game against the Golden State Warriors. Of course, the Clippers had a lot more than that against Memphis. I believe it was 19 turnovers that the Clippers committed against the Grizzlies in their attacking, blitzing style of play, the pressing point of attack defense that Memphis has shown all Summer League long. That's going to be a major key to this game. Can Memphis create turnovers? And Jake LaRavia is a major supporter of that process. Obviously, Scotty Pippen Jr., assuming he's healthy, he'll be out there on the court, and he's going to lead that charge in the point of attack defense. But to have another longer wing combo forward that can attack passing lanes and disrupt offensive sets, that would be really good to see. Trey Jamison's going to have a good night. I mentioned Ware a moment ago. Without Zach Edey, you're going to need Jamison to go out there and get after that guy, try to get him in foul trouble. His limited offensive game is going to negate that to an extent. Where you can really see Jamison have his impact as if he can force Ware to not be effective offensively. He gets his baskets around the rim more often than not. If Jamison can go and be an attacking body, someone that wears out Ware, literally, pun intended, that matters a lot, because that will be a weak link in the Miami chain on both ends of the floor. Ware's had a really strong summer league for them. They need a lot from that center position. They need GG to continue to be a facilitator of offense. Nobody's questioning what GG Jackson can do as a scorer. We've seen it at the NBA level. We've seen it in summer league. I know he can score the basketball. The 4 assists were really promising because it means the ball's not stopping in his hand. He's finding a better shot, a better opportunity. He's moving, and it's allowing for the floor spacing to have better effect. That is significant. Finding slashers, open shooters off of dribble penetration. The book is out on GG. Teams are going to collapse on him. He has good size. He has a good handle for his size. He's a very, very competent driver at the rim, especially in the summer league environment. Can he dish out to an open Jalen Wells? We know Wells can hit the 3. Can he make those extra passes? That's going to be the difference between a Memphis Grizzlies Summer League runner-up trophy, if that thing even exists, and a Memphis Grizzlies Summer League championship. How involved GG can be offensively. I really want to see Scotty Pippen Jr. get back on the right track with his own shooting and scoring. Again, 5 of 15 is not going to cut it against a team like the Miami Heat. Really being more selective, right? And it's wild to say that, but finding your spot, finding your rhythm, letting others eat if you don't have it. He did a good job of that. You don't get a triple-double with 10 assists, being somebody that's taking too many shots, but finding that rhythm early, because Jalen Wells can't be expected to go 6 for 7 from 3 again. That kind of negated the struggles of Scotty Pippen Jr. in the contest. So making sure that Wells gets those open looks, but also making sure that Pippen is able to get into his own rhythm early and often if Memphis is going to win this contest. Those are keys to the game for me. I am hopeful that Memphis wins. I think that because Edey is out, because Cam Spencer is out, Jake LaRavia being up in the air, you never know how Memphis is going to treat these games. I would imagine if these guys are healthy, they're going to play. Again, I can't help but be a bit skeptical of how this is all going to play out. But I'm going to choose to be optimistic. I'm going to choose to think that if LaRavia, maybe the knee hurts a little bit, but it's not a structural issue. He plays. It's just typical soreness after playing a basketball game. If LaRavia plays, I think Memphis wins, and I think they win by 4 or 5 points. If LaRavia doesn't play, I think that Miami has a real shot at this thing because the teams are very balanced, right? Memphis has a GG Jackson. Miami has a Josh Christopher. There's a yin to the yang, right? Every spot almost across both the Memphis and the Miami rosters. 2 very similar teams going into this championship game. So I'm hopeful LaRavia plays. I think that'll push Memphis over the top. To Michael Cole, once again, to his credit, he said all along that Memphis could win this thing without Zach Edey. That's essentially what has come to be. Can Zach Edey do what Joe Morant did in 2019 and watch his teammates win a Summer League championship without him? We'll talk about it on our next episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. As I mentioned earlier, we'll cover the championship game from all angles, go a little bit deeper into the Ziaire Williams trade, the Ziaire Williams era, if you want to call it that, in Memphis. DeMichael will be back with us. We'll talk more about that on Tuesday. Thank you so much for being with me here on Monday's show. Make sure you're checking out Locked On NBA and Locked On Sports Today over on YouTube. You can also check it out on Amazon Fire under the free TV channels app. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get your podcast on YouTube, but especially with Apple, Amazon, Spotify. Make us an audio part of your day as well as a visual one. Take us with you on the go wherever you are taking in Locked On Grizzlies. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. Hopefully, if you're not an everydayer, subscribe, become one. Check us out each and every time an episode drops, and the next time that will be Tuesday. Until then, go Grizzlies. Very excited for this Summer League championship. They're going for it. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I want to believe. Let's see if I'm silly to do so. We'll catch you on Tuesday.